Hi, welcome to today's show. We were doing a show on how video game skills can help you with your dating skills. So we're going to get to that a little later in the show. I've been playing a lot of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom specifically, and just over the course of playing that game, I started to realize there's a lot of parallels between the skills needed to play video games successfully versus as opposed and also with dating stuff, because I've been playing video games for like 34 years now, and I realized that over time, the skill sets that I've used in video games to let me get better and better at video games can parallel dating. So I'm going to get into that in a little bit in the show. As always, if you guys have any questions in the course of the show, you can definitely leave them in the chat now that you can hear me, and I'll be happy to answer them during the course of the show. But I wanted to start off with showing you guys this particular thing right here. Let me pull that up right here. Here we go. So this guy, I go on Reddit to check out people that are like, I go to like the Hinge app forum and I go to the OkCupid forums because I like to see the kinds of questions guys are asking there, because a lot of you guys have texting questions for me as it pertains to like texting and sending girls messages and what they mean. And so they have a lot of people out there that are posting things where they need questions, and I can figure out from that how to help you guys out. So this guy left an interesting thing. He had a situation with a woman whereby he wanted to know, based on the texting, what should his answer be now? He said he's only got so basically he's talking to this girl about some food that he's making, right? And in the course of the conversation, he's telling her how delicious it's going to be. And she starts to try to see if she can possibly come over there to see him. So the texting chain reads like this. He says, I was making bolognese, whatever, and cooking it for 3 hours. She says, nice, 3 hours. I hope it tastes really that good and worth the 3 hours. He says, ha ha, yeah, it's important so all the flavors develop. But it's really good, and today I made lasagna with it. And then she says, okay, you're very dedicated with your cooking. And then she says, can I taste a bit? With the sad face and whatever. And then he says, sounds like a plan, but you have to hurry. It's almost all gone. So at this point, I think he's thinking this is just playful banter. She's not really meaning anything by it. But then she says, I mean, if you really want to share it, I'm down. And the next move is his to make. And he's worried. He's worried because if he's like I was back in my dating years when I wasn't that great at it, at the point where women started to actually really do things and give signals that indicated that they'd be down for a hookup or a makeout session or whatever, I was so used to having women reject me that I'd be sitting there like, nah, this isn't like what this person proposing isn't actually what they're really proposing. Like this is the fluke. This is just a jokey conversation. If I'm going to say this thing and then she's going to take it back and that's going to be over, right? So, but this is what I tell you guys all the time is that this is why it's important to really study up on how women communicate, and specifically studying up on how they use passive language to try to hint that they want to do a thing. Now, in today's world, unfortunately, women can't just come out and say, hey, I want to come over there and bang your brains out, so let's do it. So what they'll do is, in the course of a conversation, they're going to be looking at what you say to them and see if there's anything you throw out there that could be an excuse for them to latch onto to be able to invite themselves over by saying something in a way that's supposed to trigger you to invite them. So in this case, he's talking about this lunch that he made. I got news for you. She does not care that he made any kind of bologna, but she's able to use that conversation as an excuse to say, oh man, that sounds really good. I wish I could have some. I wish you would share some with me. And she's thinking in her head, yeah, if I say that to him, he'll know the only way that can actually happen is if he invites me over to have some bologna in more ways than one. And so you got to catch on to this. I know men want women to speak more directly in terms of their wants and needs. They do not grow up in a world where that is possible for them to do at all times without being judged for it. So you just as a guy got to know, because if I was in this guy's situation, I wouldn't even have a question about what to do next. I'd be like, hey, it'll be here for the next hour. So if you get it within the next 60 minutes, I'll still have some available. After that, who knows? And that would let her know, hey, coming over right now. I'll send you the address. We'll make it happen. All right. So this is a very easy conversation for me to decipher, but I've also been out here for a long time and I study up on female communication, and I've been in enough of these scenarios to know what this looks like. If you are a guy that's struggling with that, then I can definitely help you at the website, but really study up on how women communicate and how they passively say things that in girl world, this would be a no-brainer. Like if she told her girlfriends, oh, I'd love to try some, the girlfriend would automatically know, hey, well, no problem, come on over. But she wants to invite. She wants to invite from the guy because she wants to know that her presence is actually wanted versus her forcing it upon him, okay? So I just wanted to show that in the course of my travels this week. I thought that was really interesting to that I ran across this thing on Reddit. So anyway, moving on to here. All right, let's go into some of the other various questions I've gotten during the course of this past week. So there was a guy that wrote me a message. It's a decent size, so I'll try to cut through as much as possible. So this guy writes me this message. He says, I met this girl a month ago. She showed high interest from the beginning. After a brief conversation, she created a situation to see me again by showing up in a place she knew I would be at. That's always a good sign when women are starting to try to preemptively see you. That means that they're being motivated to go after you. And as I always say, if she's chasing you, she can't be replacing you. Continuing, he says, let's see, the day after she messaged me on Instagram about having a coffee, it ended up being wine. We had a great date. She was all over me, doing almost all the talking. We ended in my place. However, the hookup wasn't great. I was a bit drunk and she was still on that time of the month, which is a big turnoff for me. So it wasn't my best performance. She seemed understanding and still sent me I had a great time with you text the following day. So lots to unpack just in this first paragraph, but the fact that they went back to the place, fantastic. But here's where you got to let the big head overthink the little head, right? You got to ask yourself the question, just because a hookup situation has been set up, does that mean this is the opportune time to do that? Because those first hookups, guys, I'm telling you, women put a lot of judgment on that first hookup in terms of if they're going to feel enough chemistry with you to want to do stuff again. And so even if the woman is suggesting, hey, let's go back to whatever place, you still got to look at everything that's going on and decide ultimately if, based on the current scenario, if you're going to be able to give a performance in the bed that's going to make her want to have future hookups with you. Because if not, whether it was her fault or your fault for it not working out as good as it could have, the blame's going to be on you for not taking lead of the situation. So in this case, when they got to the place, he was drunk. One, guys, really, when you go on these first, second, third dates, you need to be in control of your entire autonomy. So that means that do not overdrink and do not get buzz drunk. I know you're thinking, if I get a little buzz and she gets a little buzz, then it's going to be easier to hook up. I need you to get to the place where you can be self-confident enough to be able to have a hookup happen without you having to be inebriated. Because then you have things like this happen where you're, aside from the other things going on, you're not going to be at your best and your stuff might decide to, hey, I'm a little buzzed and I don't want to work today. So just saying, try to be as sober as possible. Maybe only have one drink versus like enough to get you drunk. Just saying. So that happened. And then she was also, it was that time of the month for her. Now, hey, we've all been in those, well, some of us have been in those scenarios where things are happening and maybe at the time that you guys are about to do some stuff, she wasn't quite at the point where that time of the month had started. And sometimes hooking up can get that going. Hey, I've been there. I get it. It can be freak out. But if you know ahead of time that she's already doing that and you still decide to proceed and go ahead, then yeah, it's going to kind of be a bad time. You're probably going to be a little bit squeamish. She's going to be all in her head about, oh my gosh, it's that time of the month. I hope that I'm not, and it's not going to be enjoyable for her. And we want that first time with you and her to be enjoyable. It ain't got to be like the best hookup she's ever had, but it's got to at least be enjoyable and allow her to see that, oh, this could be better later on. If that doesn't happen, then what can start to happen is she starts to realize, oh, that hookup wasn't great. Maybe it won't be great later. And we'd like it'd be great if women could give us the benefit of the doubt off of that first performance. The reality is, especially for hot women that probably regularly have guys coming to them, it could be a one and done. And she's like, this wasn't good enough for me. I'm on to the next thing. All right. So he says, we briefly met 2 more times, but there was no chance to make out. She even started bringing up ideas of visiting her place where there was a family/friends gathering, but I cordially refused, mentioning I would prefer to meet just her, which she understood. And that's great. I'm glad this guy did not take the bait of trying to see friends and family after only 1, maybe 2 dates, because that is way too early for you guys to be meeting up with friends and family. It can cause them to get in her head early on and make judgments about you that could affect how she feels about you. And we don't want that happening. So the less interference you can have in the beginning, the better. So he says, this whole time I wasn't over pursuing, just focused on myself and letting her initiate contact. So then he says, she suddenly got sick, making the whole thing weird, as she was having symptoms, suggesting it could be an STD. We got tested, negative results, and it seems she just had a urine infection. I made the mistake of visiting her while she was sick and ended up meeting the father and the brother. And even though the vibes were nice, it felt too quick. Well, to be fair, you didn't know that her family was going to be at the hospital. I would say, as weird as it sounds to say, like, I know you're trying to show that you care about this woman early on, but doing something like visiting her in the hospital, you got to think about and it's not the worst thing in the world, just, because some women would be very, very appreciative of that. I'm just trying to give you, I go based on probability, right? Like the probability of the action that you're doing being more helpful in terms of attracting her or less, right? So you got to think about not just the visiting part, you got to think about how she's thinking about it. You're taking time out of your seemingly busy day to try to go and see her because she got sick, right? That is something that a boyfriend would do, and you guys aren't yet at the boyfriend-girlfriend stage. So now you're doing actions that are indicative of a boyfriend, which can signal to her that you're already thinking of her in that light. And as I always say, if she is not there with you yet, then that is an action that's going to make her feel like this is now being forced into a relationship situation. The better thing to do would to have been just made a phone call. Hey, just wanted to check to see how you are. That would have been enough of an action to let her know that you care, but not so much that you're sacrificing your time and energy to go see her. And it sucks that it's got to be that way, guys. I find, honestly, it's like the effort you show in the beginning should be you're asking her out and you're showing her a good time. Anything beyond that starts to feel like boyfriend territory, and it starts to feel like unearned behavior. Women want to earn the extras that you're going to throw in a relationship. And too many guys are trying to do the extras early on in an attempt to try to stand out. But all it does is make a woman feel like she's being forced into a relationship and that it's moving too fast. All right. Anyway, he said, and then meeting the family there too, like the fact that the father and the brother were there, like I've already talked about meeting family early on. Yeah, that doesn't help the situation. So then he says, I also messed up by staying overnight because we didn't hook up as she was still sick. So yeah, you trying to do the whole, these are all boyfriend actions. You're going to see her at the hospital. You're meeting the family now. You're staying the night with her after like 1 date and a couple, you said 2 more times you guys met up. So we'll say 3 dates, you're already doing this. And I know in the movies we see like, oh, I was the guy like overextended himself for the girl. And by date 3, they were already in love and saying, I love you and this and that. That's just not on average how it works in the real world. And in the real world, you don't get any punishment if you're not doing those things. Like you could possibly not get punished for doing those things, but there's a high probability you will. You don't get punished for not doing those things early on. If you were the boyfriend, you would, but you're not the boyfriend. And most women have an understanding of the difference between what a guy's going to do for her when he's the boyfriend versus what's acceptable to do in the dating phase. So anyway, he says, next morning, I felt strange, like I knew I made a mistake and wasn't feeling very confident, rightfully so. He says, I was a bit quiet and aloof. She picked up on it. After 2 days, I initiated contact, suggesting to go for a hike, which she agreed to. I could feel she was different and more distant. We had a nice hike and some interesting, deep conversations about life, which even I enjoyed and felt created mutual connection. Maybe weren't the best to rekindle the spark. Exactly. And here's the thing, because many of you guys are thinking, okay, and I see this on like, I watched like The Bachelor, Bachelorette, all these shows, Married at First Sight, all these things where everybody's talking about, well, if you want to build a connection, you got to talk about deep stuff. You got to go into like, the traumas of your childhood and then what really motivates you and drives you. And these are the things that are supposed to connect. And it's not that you can't do those things, but to his point, like, those aren't necessarily things that are going to spark arousal in her. Like her hearing about your traumatic childhood, she might feel empathy for you, but she might not feel a romantic connection or feel sexually attracted to you when you talk about that stuff, right? Because in those early days of dating, she's just trying to have a good time. Can this guy show me a good time? Can I hang out with him and be able to make and feel like we're starting to build something towards like a romantic relationship? And you bringing in trauma and serious subjects only takes away from the fun of that. Now, as a woman has more fun with you, she'll start to say, this guy seems really cool. He's fun. He's vibrant. But now I want to get to know deeper parts of him. And it's her being able to go to you and ask those questions and seek out those questions that will make her more attractive. You just giving it freely, that's going to chase more women away than you want, you know? So anyway, he says, I tried to get closer and kiss her, to which she went on to say she wasn't currently feeling it and didn't want to force things. I reacted in a stoic way, saying, that's all good, acting as nothing happened. She seemed insecure and a bit confused about me standing my ground and being non-reactive. Well, I think that could be part of it. I mean, ultimately, if that's a situation that's happening, then you shouldn't really worry so much about like what that is in terms of what she's feeling like. But ultimately, recognize that you guys don't really need to be projecting onto the person you're dating what you think they're feeling. The reality is she's probably thinking or feeling things that you're not thinking or feeling at all. But when you put out stuff like this, or you say, oh, I thought she was being distant, then what that means is that you're feeling that she's getting distant. And so you're going to not project out that you're thinking and feeling that, and it's going to cause her to also then feel that way. It's like reflecting back, you know? So you got to be mindful of that. Hold on 1 second, guys. All right. Check cash. All right, cool. Had to do a battery change because this mic's acting all weird today. Anyway, so continuing on, he says, on the way back while sitting on a bus, she got closer to me and rested her head on my shoulder for a while, showing affection. I invited her over. She said no. She hugged me and said to stay in touch. Oh, it's not sounding good. So basically, it's like you can see the level of light she has starting to decline. But why is that? Because again, this guy was doing a little too much, a little too soon. He was overextending himself. He was making himself available to her when she got sick, which she didn't really want. And now they're having all these deep conversations. And these aren't necessarily bad things to do, but you got to look at the difference between what's good in a relationship versus what's good during the dating phase. And it's just, he didn't have the knowledge of that, you know? So in terms of this right now, he's saying, she hugged me and said that he said, I won't contact unless she does. So far, nothing after 1 day. For the next weeks, she will be away traveling. So I would say this, during the course of her travels, like you guys are not in a relationship. So if you guys are to have communication, I'd let her reach out. I'd wait to see if she gets back and decides to touch up with you. And if she does, and it's fantastic. And if not, then it is what it is. At best, I'd say, if you know when she's getting back in town, try to hit her up one more time and say, hey, glad that you're back in town. Wanted to see if you're available for a date. This is Nat. Like, let's go out and do that, you know? But, you know, it's one of those things. It's like a lesson learned. Like these are unfortunately the bumps on the road that come along with dating. And that's a good thing because you'll know, okay, based on this scenario, I know now not to do these various things if I'm trying to get with a woman, right? So he asked a few questions. He says, did I mess up or she might still come back? Here's what I found. I found that when women pull away, if you acquiesce to that and say, you know what, she's allowed to pull away, maybe this isn't the time to be in contact with her. I find that if you're not being overbearing about it, women will start to second guess and question like, but why isn't he hitting me up? Like, was something wrong with me? Was he trying to get rid of me the whole time? Or maybe I was too harsh on him and now he's afraid to get in contact with me. And if they have those thoughts, the fact that you're staying away and the fact that you're not pestering her, it's giving her the chance to decide if she wants to move along with you. So if she does reach out, that's your incentive to be able to ask her back out and just know, okay, now that I'm going back out with her again, don't do these things to push her away again, because what you don't want to do is think, oh my God, I got her back. I'm back to like doing excessive stuff. Don't do that. Like let women that you're dating earn your extra time, attention, and care. If you just do that, and I know as guys, it's hard because we want so bad to do for the people we care about, but you got to realize on your end, you do not actually know this person after 2 or 3 dates. Men, we think we do, we don't. So she's taken her 2 to 3 months to do her due diligence. I suggest you do the same and not rush this process, and you will find it will work out better for you in the long run. All right. Then he said some other stuff about we're both artists. We have similar visions about the future. She has a family of artists. She's a great pick. She's unexpected. But like guys will typically do this thing where they say, oh, she'd be such a great pick because X, Y, and Z. I will tell you now, you could be a guy that's an artist and she could be an artist and you guys could not match up because she has a bad attitude. She has a traumatic family past. You have different political views. Like this is why you can't just go in on, oh, we'd be so great together because of this 1 or 2 things. You need 3 months to date this person to see the totality of, or a good portion of the totality of what they're about before you bring in those feelings. That's why I tell you guys, it's better to treat dating like a research project versus like, I already like her and I'm going to go in and look for signs that proves that I should like her. Like that's a horrible way to date. You need to be objective with every single woman. I don't care if you're dating a horrible 4 or a knockout 10. It's just skin. You need to go and dive deeper into who they actually are as a person, their life, their backstory, and really see if you guys connect in a way that's going to be beneficial to a relationship. Because her being an artist means nothing if she comes home and yells at you. So just saying, do a bit more due diligence and you'll have better results. Hopefully, Guy, that helps you out. All right, before we get on to the crux of this show, I want to answer one more person's thing. And, let's do this one. Okay, so I saw this question on Reddit and I wanted to answer it, right? Because it's this idea of the fact this guy's mad that we're not mad, but he notices that there are other people out there that, if they're on dating apps, they can just tell a girl to come over and they'll come over. And he's never been that guy. He's been able to get hookups after a couple of dates, but never on the first date, right? Where they just, hey, come over, no date necessary, whatever. So I want to go over this because I'm sure a lot of you guys are wondering, how do these guys on these dating apps get women to just come over and hook up? Let's get into his question. So this guy says, what is it with people who want to, quote, hang out at their place instead of a first date? And how do you pull this off? I feel like some people are just able to do this while others don't. I never actually have. I've been on dozens of dates over the last 5 years and have had some medium-term relationships of around a year. I will say, many people can't even get to that. Like plenty of guys get on dating apps. They might get a date. They might get a hookup. They don't get a relationship because most guys after 1 or 2 dates, honestly, start to treat women like their girlfriends and it freaks them out. And then they run away and then they got to get back on the dating app. So the fact that you're even able to get into a relationship, already kudos. You're like 85% ahead of most dudes, right? So anyway, he says, but it always starts off with an actual date, like grabbing drinks. But some of my coworkers and friends seem to just find people on Hinge or Bumble, and instead of going on a formal date, just somehow manage to either get the girl to come to their place or vice versa from the get-go. I even have a dorky friend with very little experience who had a girl just tell him to come over instead of a date. But that's never happened to me, even when I try. They might say they don't feel comfortable doing that yet and would prefer a different place first. I understand that women are nervous about meeting strangers at a house rather than a common public place, which makes sense. Does that mean the vibe I give off is likely shady or untrustworthy? Or maybe I just seem like a date kind of guy based on my profile and clothes. Most of the girls end up liking me and we may hook up later. So it's not like I'm scaring them off, but what's the difference between a guy who does dates versus hangouts? Most of the people I know who do the hangout dates are much more casual types who never dress up and just wear hoodies and sweats all day or game, like video games, which we'll talk about later. But I've never pulled that part off. Part of me kind of wants it. So here's the thing, Guy, is that I'll say this as a generality for the majority of women. Most women are going to usually need some kind of date just so they can get out of their own head about potentially going home with a stranger that they don't know. Like if they have a few drinks with you, have a conversation, they can say, okay, well, because women in their head are always like, if I ever tell my girlfriends this story, I need to be able to justify it. So the justification could be, I went on a date, I had a couple of drinks, and now, oh, I just felt so, and it just came to me, and we were both, and next thing I know, oh, so that gives them the excuse that they need, right? But what about the dudes that don't do that? What are they doing? Well, I can't, talk for all guys. And I did online dating for quite a few years. And there were only a couple of times where I was able to make it happen where it's just like, hey, come on over, right? So here's a couple of ways that can happen. I'm going to give you 5 examples of ways this can happen, right? So the first way to have a potential, hey, come hang out thing, this is the cheat code, right? Is to do a FaceTime date first. You're talking to her on the app and you say, hey, you know what? Let's do a FaceTime conversation. And in that FaceTime conversation, make it about a good, if you can, 20, 30 minutes where you're talking, you're vibing. This feels to her like an in-person date because she's seeing your face, but you're not actually in person with her, right? So then after that's done, you could say, hey, I had a great conversation with you on the FaceTime. I'd love to talk more in person. I'm just about to make myself a meal for dinner real quick. If you want to come over, we can talk and chat. It is what it is. That's one way that you can have a woman. You can now give a woman an excuse. And also because she feels like she kind of knows you based on this FaceTime, she can say, well, it's not like I'm going over to a stranger's house because I did just talk to him for 30 minutes. So that's one way you can do that. Another way is you can do, like I showed you guys earlier with this guy, right? Let me show you this guy's thing one more time. Right here, right? So the second way is to mention things in your conversation with the person on the dating app that would entice them to want to come over. So in this guy's case, he was saying, hey, I just made some bologna and it's really tender and I cooked it for 3 hours. And unbeknownst to him, that was the excuse that allowed her to say, I'd love to taste that. Man, if I could come over, so you want to present things to women. This is also true if you're on just again, these are like cheat codes, guys. If you're on a first date with a woman, I highly recommend mentioning things that are at your apartment, house, place, whatever, that would entice a woman enough, or at least give the woman enough of an excuse to say, I want to check that out. So if you're talking to her in the course of a message, you could say, oh yeah, I'm a great artist. Matter of fact, I have 4 or 5 paintings that I've painted that I have hanging up in my house. And it's like, I won awards for them. They're really, really great. That allows her now to say, oh man, I'd love to see that artwork. And you can say, hey, well, you know what? If you want to come over, I can give you a short little art show. But the point is this, you're giving her an excuse. You're talking about something that is in your house that she can grab onto and say, I want to see that. I want to experience that. If you're a gamer, you can say, hey, you know what? I just got the latest Mario Kart and the latest update just came out where there's new tracks, which is coming out this Friday. That's how I know that. And you can say, and I'm trying to find somebody to play them with, hey, if you want to come over and just do a quick little Mario Kart tournament, because women apparently love Mario Kart, then you can come over and do that. We can have a little game night. I'll cook some dinner. We can just have a fun playing on the TV, no harm, no foul. But those are things you can do or say to get women to come over. The third thing, though, very important, is to listen for clues that she'd actually be into coming over to your place for a hookup. And because as men, again, we're very, very literal. And sometimes our literalness can allow us to miss out on opportunities that women are, to them, blatantly throwing at us. If you say, yeah, I just got this new package in the mail. It's this brand new chair. She's like, oh, I'd love to see that chair and sit in it. And we'll be like, oh, that'd be cool. So anyway, and we completely bypass the fact that they just said and hinted in their own way, I'm using your chair dummy as an excuse to come over to your place. So maybe catch up on that. So this is, again, why it's good to learn the language of women and how they say things, because they're not going to say it the same way that we as a guy would say it. They're going to say it in their own way. But it's like learning another language. If you learn the language of women, you'll find that you're able to suddenly see a bunch of opportunities that you thought were never there before. All right. So study up on that. And you'll find that you can just look at stuff they're saying to be able to realize, oh, they're actually signaling that they want to come over, which makes less work for you. The fourth way that this can happen is when you're presenting these ideas about coming over, right? You need to make it very clear to her that a hookup does not have to happen. Because if she gets any kind of idea that the only reason you're inviting her over is for a hookup, it's going to make her read you as desperate. And we don't want that, right? But if you're just like, hey, you know what? Come over from the Mario Kart example, right? Hey, so I just got Mario Kart, the new wave of tracks are just coming out. I got food here and I got a gaming thing. So, I know this is typically like a weird thing for a guy to invite a girl over. And I'm not trying to like insinuate any kind of hookup. So you know what? I'm just saying blatantly, that ain't got to happen. But I do want to get to know you and I got games and snacks. What do you say? And I've actually done that before and it's worked. Not with the Mario Kart part, but like other things. Like, hey, I'm making dinner. I just have food that's extra. And so we could go out someplace if you want to. But also, if you want to come over here, I know it seems kind of weird, but I've already made food. So if you want to come over now, you can. Otherwise, and always say, always have to out, like, otherwise, hey, if you don't want to do it, no harm, no foul, I'll see you some other day. But you'll find by doing that, you're giving women the option to say, I don't have to come over, but the option is available. And if I make that choice, then he's totally down for it. Because women ultimately want to know, as weird as it sounds, women are going to be in their head thinking, but does he want me to come over? If he doesn't directly invite me, then does that mean that he's wishy-washy about me? And so oftentimes they're just waiting for us to say, hey, my place is open and available to come over. But when you say that, again, make sure you're saying, and just so you know, nothing has to happen physically. But I do want to get to know you. Come on over. And then the last way is to set up your profile to where she's already thinking about wanting to do that thing with you. Because here's the thing, right? Is that if you have your profile set up in a way that shows off your swagger and shows off a little bit about your lifestyle and has prompts in it that are being answered in a funny type of way, then you will find that women of their own accord will be like on the app like, oh, yeah, this guy's all about it. This is a guy that I need to be able to like do something right now. So, but you got to make sure that's set up on your profile. And if it's not, then you got to figure out how to do that. Now, I have a program at my website called Smart Digital Dating that can walk you through the ins and outs of that. So you can go to introvertdatingsuccess.com, check out the programs, and it is available for you to check out. All right. But hopefully, Guy, this helps you guys out. All right. All right. So we've answered a few questions here, and now I'm going to go ahead and get into the meat of this show. Hold on just a second here. And yeah, we're going to talk about video games and how the skill set of being a gamer and being able to like use those skills to parallel over into your actual dating life. All right. Hold on just a second here. Meanwhile, somebody asked the question in the chat. Vicarious is asking, are you married? So here's the thing, guys, is that I don't typically get into the present now of my dating / marriage situation, because ultimately I feel as though this show is about you and what you're going through. And also, regardless of where I'm at in my journey, I feel as though what's more important is me helping you with where you're at in your guys' journey. That's just real talk, I used to follow this guy named Doc Love, and he was a guy that gave dating advice for years and years and years and years. And I had no idea if he was married or single or whatnot. And what happened was he finally died in 2020. He was like old, like in his 80s, right? And that's when it came out that, oh, he had a whole like family with like kids and stuff and a wife and all this other stuff. Had no idea for the 20 years he was giving coaching if he was married or single. So I tend to think that can be more of a distraction. And so for that reason, I typically just keep whatever's going with me in terms of like my dating life / my marriage life. Like I don't put all that out there. Like I give you guys stories about stuff that's happened in my dating life, whether it's happening presently or happened 20, 30 years ago. The stories and the skill set can still be correlated to like what you guys are going through. So that's kind of why I don't talk about that kind of stuff on here, Anyway, so I will now get into the crux of the show here. So let's go ahead and get into that. Hold on a second here. Hey, people trying to contact me now. I'm trying to do a show. Okay. So let's get into it. So video games. I don't know about you, but I love them. I've been an avid Nintendo fan since 7 years old when I first started playing video games, right? And so what I've realized over time is like I've been playing video games for 34 years now. And in the course of that, I've played a lot of versions of games, whether it's shooters, puzzles, action adventure, yada, yada, yada. And these are all various different genres of games, right? But the most recent game I'm playing now is The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. And I put an exorbitant amount of hours into playing that freaking game, right? And so I had an epiphany the other day, which is like, before this game, it was The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. And the map for the current game is the same as the map for the previous game. A lot of the control schemes are the same, et cetera, et cetera. And what I realized is that in the course of playing this current game and the new game, that because I had a lot of skill sets that I learned in the previous game, it's really helped me at the starting point of this new game to be able to play it more effectively, even as they're throwing in some new stuff here and there. The basic core of like climbing and using your swords and how to fight enemies, because a lot of them are the same enemies, and going over certain parts of the land, because a lot of land's the same, like has been very, very helpful, right? And it made me realize that, you know, there's a lot of parallels between not only playing video games themselves, but the skill set it takes to learn video games that, if guys are paying attention, would actually parallel over to dating. And I stress this because I think it could start to be a lot easier for guys in dating if they were actually realizing that the skills that they're developing when they're playing these games could actually be beneficial in terms of dating. So I want to go over that today because I think it's important. And also, I just played so much Zelda that I just have video games on the brain. You can see I got my Mario outfit on because I've been playing Mario forever also. It's been freaking fantastic, all right? So let's get into it. So to start off with, it's my notes here. Oh, yeah, one thing I do want to stress is that in the process of researching for this show, I was trying to look up, has anybody else done any other show about how video game skills can help you with dating? And what I found is that there are more negatives in terms of the correlation of video games and dating than there are positives on YouTube. Like if you were to go to YouTube and type in video game skills and dating, the majority of videos you're going to see is how video games ruin relationships, how video games cause guys not to want to go outside, and how, you know, women with boyfriends have trouble getting their guys off video games, how they're addicted. And it's just all these freaking negatives, you know? And it sucks because, you know, there are women that actually play video games, for one, like women that love video games. They love playing with their partners. I went on Reddit and saw a Zelda forum where all these women are talking about how they help their boyfriends by like doing the search missions for items, or how they'll be sitting there with their boyfriend watching them play and, you know, giving suggestions and hints. And it's like they totally enjoy it. So it kind of sucks that video games, and to be fair, video games can be addicting. And if you're not careful, you could end up spending way too much time in the video game world versus in the outside world trying to deal with actual women. And it's especially true for introverted guys because we're already looking for excuses to stay inside. So now you got a video game console where you can play like a long-winded game or play a puzzle game over and over again. And admittedly, you know, the reward centers of our brain like that. We're winning. Oh my God, we're getting these prizes. It makes us feel a certain way. So I get all of that, right? But that said, you have to look at beyond that, looking at, okay, outside of the addictive qualities, there are still plenty of good things that video games can teach us about the process of getting good at something and then being able to execute it flawlessly, and then paralleling those into video games, all right? So let's go ahead and get into that. So first off, I'm going to be talking about the parallels between stuff in video games and learning video games and how that can be applied to dating as a whole, right? I got a lot of examples of that today. So to start off with video games, in the beginning, you got to learn the basics. When I was 7 years old, the first time I held a Nintendo controller, I had no idea what I was doing. I saw buttons, I saw arrows. I was trying to move Mario and trying to jump at the same time. And it's dumb to think about now, but like being able to do that, to move myself forward and to be able to jump and run with just these 3 or 4 buttons was like the hardest learning curve ever at the time. But everybody's got to start out with how controllers work. What does the joystick do? What do these buttons do? What does the start and select do? And this is the basics, right? And the same is true when you're trying to date women, is that, you know, for all the differences we want to believe, all women are different and whatever, there are some basic facts about women that are going to be generally the same for most women. You know, most women, they are typically more emotional than most guys. They have these various different parts than we do. They have these various erogenous zones. They typically like certain types of colors and certain types of things. Again, this is a general basis, but it's important to start with the generalities because you can go off and branch off to different things from there. But you need to know the basis of these are girls, these are women, this is what they like, this is what they don't like, so forth and so on. So you can start to get an idea of how to maneuver in the dating game, right? So that's the first part. We all start off with the basics. From there, in video games, right? When you first start out with video games, you're not going to be great. You're just not. You're going to play. I remember my first time playing Mario. You try to get to like the little pipe and the Goomba hits you. I've walked 5 steps and I'm already dead. And then I managed to somehow figure out how to control going towards the Goomba and jumping on the Goomba. Great. And then I get to that first duck where I got to jump over this like empty thing and I fall in the hole. Boom, I'm dead. And just getting past that first level of Mario probably takes like an hour and a half the first time you played it. For the first time you ever played video games in your entire life, right? And so you got to understand that in video games, when you first start out, you're going to make these mistakes, right? But as you'll see, they are necessary to make in order for you to be able to, A, get the basics down, and also to eventually get towards figuring out how the game works. And the same is true of women. When you first start talking to women or trying to attempt to date them or approach them, I got news for you guys. You're going to crash and burn. It's part of the learning process of how to date women. And I find it interesting that guys that play video games know about the process of I got to keep doing and messing up to eventually start to see success. But yet when they go out into the world to talk to women, it's like, I talked to one woman and she laughed at me and I'm never talking to women again. Or I tried to ask out this one girl and she said no and it hurt my feelings and now I can't do it. Again, the mindset needs to be, it's going to take several times before you're able to even get a woman to stay in a lengthy conversation, to give you her actual number, to want to talk to you on the phone, to text you back, to get on a date. Like all these things correlate, right? So just because you're not getting it right away, you can't beat yourself up because you wouldn't do that with a video game. Like I have had several times now in Zelda where I have died repeatedly. It doesn't stop me from trying to beat the bad guy. I just be like, okay, that strategy didn't work, so I know to try something else. Continuing. Oh, in video games. In video games, most video games usually have some kind of pattern that is present. In Nintendo's case, Nintendo is notorious for what I call the 3-hit strategy. With bigger bad guys, like in your Zeldas or like you're fighting Bowser and Mario, you typically have to either jump on them or hit them 3 times. Sometimes if they're being a little difficult, you hit them 3 times and then they change up their pattern and then you got to hit them 3 more times and the thing's dead, right? And so with video games, when you first start playing, you're not going to be aware that there's a pattern. But once you start to play the game a bit more, you start to see, oh, these bad guys move this way, so I got to move this way. Oh, this big boss does these 3 things and then leaves himself open. So if I just know to hit him when he's open, then I'll be able to get him. And so this is also true of women. I think the dumbest lie that men have bought into is that women are difficult to understand because it may take a bit of a learning curve, but even women, as a generality, have patterns. Most women, on average, typically like a certain type of treatment, and they like when guys do certain kinds of actions. They like certain kinds of things on a guy. They like certain kinds of ways that men are going to approach them versus other ways. And so, and I could go on a litany list of like all these examples of all these patterns, right? But like, for example, I'll give you a pattern that I've talked about before, right? On average, I have found if I take a girl on a date and I show her a good time, and then I wait 4 to 5 days before I contact her for another date, more often than not, that pattern results in me getting a second date, and then eventually a third date, and then eventually a hookup. Now, what I found early on by accident was that the pattern of I'm going to take her out, show her a good time, and then I'm going to text her right away to let her know I had a good time and that she got home safe, and then I'm going to text her the next day to see how she's doing, usually resulted in them losing interest. So, based on these 2 patterns, which one do you think I'm going to do more of? The one where I text her all the time or the one where I wait a couple of days before I ask her out again? I found that the second pattern works better. And so therefore, but that was an example of I had to go through enough scenarios of taking girls out on dates and then losing them out because I was texting too much to eventually see, oh, but wait, the girls that are sticking around are the ones that I'm not texting all the time. And that is a pattern that I had to learn. But it takes time to be able to see these patterns, but they will come. And all women, typically I found in terms of getting to relationships, the pattern is basically the same, which is like you take them out, show them a good time, repeat until they start asking you out to see you more than once a week. And then you do that, repeat. And then inevitably they come to you and ask you to be in a relationship. Like that pattern has allowed me to get into a bevy of relationships. But You have to know that. And I don't think enough guys stick around, or more important, most guys are still in their head about what do I as the guy need to do in order to impress her. They don't stop and say, wait a minute, but if I just study women and I study what things are that, you have women friends that are telling you about guys they're dating. Ask them how they got into the relationship, what made them attracted to this dude. You'll start to see, if you ask enough women, it's like the same pattern over and over again. Well, I didn't like him. I don't know if I liked him at first, and then he took me out, and then blah, blah, blah happened, and then I started to feel things, and then he wouldn't text me and call me. Like the pattern across the board is typically the same. So if you study that, you'll see, just like a video game, you'll be able to master this a lot easier if you're able to look for patterns that are going to allow you to shortcut and not overthink what you're trying to do in the dating game. Another parallel with video game series, right? Like I'm talking about Zelda today, right? And Mario. So with video game series is, once you've mastered one, I have found that most of the skill sets that you have used in one of these games is going to be helpful to know for future iterations of the series. For example, with Mario, it's whether he's in 3D or 2D, he's jumping, he's running, he's flying at some point. These patterns and these things do not change. These skill sets do not change. With Link, between Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, like, again, the way in which you go about finding treasure chests, the ways in which you defeat some of the same enemies, like a lot of those things are the same. Even if they add new graphics or different characters, much of the basics are going to be the same. And I say this because, again, men think they bought into this lie that all women are different. I got news for you. Even though they might be in a different shell, most of them are still relatively processing things from an emotional standpoint. Most of them still like pretty flowery things. Most of them are trying to lean into their feminine. The ones that aren't are having a horrible time dating. But most women, I find, at least in my experience, are still trying to lean into their feminine. And so what you'll find is that even if there's some differentials here and there, you'll find that a lot of the same basic skill sets are going to transfer from one woman to the next. So for example, you might date one woman that gets aroused by you touching her boobs. You might have another one that doesn't get aroused that way, but you kiss on her neck and she gets aroused. In both situations, women have spots on them somewhere that gets them aroused. That is a basic principle that's going to apply to the majority of women you date. And it's good to know that, so that way you're not thinking, I got to completely learn a whole new set of skills for this new woman. No, you don't. Like, you being yourself and figuring out what's worked for one woman, you'll find if at best 70% of that stuff that's on one woman will work on the next one. But if you don't start out all learning any of this stuff, then you're never going to know like what to look for that's consistently working across the board for the majority of women. Let me get to the boards here. Hold on a second. I got some stuff today. Hold on a second here. Okay. So another thing is that in most games, in order to succeed, you're going to have to level up. Got my sound effect board working. Great. So yeah, you're going to have to level up. You're going to start off as a noob. You're going to start off with as small Mario. You're going to start, in Link's case, you start off with basically butt naked in a loincloth with no weapons and no powers. And in order to succeed, what you find is that as you go through the course of the game, you're going to develop new powers. You're going to develop new abilities. And once you master those, it's going to make you stronger and stronger for the next section of the game. And the same is true of dating, is that most guys make the mistake of thinking, well, I should be able to date as I am, and how I am right now is totally fine. And you know what, guy? There's a girl out there that will date you as you are right now. But the question is it the high quality woman that you want to actually get, right? So what you'll find is that in the course of dating, again, you're going to have pitfalls. You're going to learn some things. If you're smart, you're going to realize where you're at right now is okay, but you want to do better than okay. You want to be able to stand out amongst all these other men. You want to be a 5'7" guy that is being able to get more dates than the 6'2" guy based on your skill set level, right? And so if you're smart about that, you'll read things, you'll study up on things, and you'll gain this new knowledge that's going to allow you to be better for every interaction. If you're an introvert now that maybe isn't the best at communicating with women, it might be something as simple as learning how to slow down your talk. It might be something as simple as learning how to listen more, knowing what kind of questions they're going to make women feel like they're connecting to you. And then you go out one night and you go to a party, you meet a new girl there, you start being able to talk, and you realize, oh crap, the conversation's flowing. And you actually end up getting the number. Your prize for leveling up in your conversation is you get the girl's actual number. And now you call her up and you blow it because you don't know how to do a phone call. Fine. You learn now the skill set of what to say on a phone call that's going to get on a date, and you do that, and your victory is you now have a date. So Never think that you know everything. I've been giving you guys advice for like since 2004, and I still study on a regular basis about by how women want to conversate, what they look forward to, things like the pros and cons, like all that stuff. I'm still a student of the game, even as I'm giving you guys this information, right? So don't ever think you can just rest on your laurels. Always be learning, and you'll find that women will feel that you clearly know what you're doing with women, which is only going to get you more dates, right? Another parallel between dating and video games is that some of you guys play co-op games. And you know what? Co-op is great because with co-op, it is easier and faster to reach your goal and to, in the video game world, like fight other baddies or other people that you're going up against, right? So co-oping, having somebody else there that can lift the burden from you to be able to get to your goal a lot faster. And in the dating world, this is why people like me exist, because getting coaching is one of the best ways that you can co-op, i.e. learn the skills you need in order to date a lot sooner. Now, if you don't hire somebody like me or read ebooks and stuff like that, you should have guys in your inner circle, ideally that are better with women that can show you the ropes. I had this at 21 when I took time off of school to go on a theater touring company for 5 months, and was with a bunch of dudes for 5 months, where I was able to go out night after night and see a couple of these dudes just like tear up the town and get like all the women in these clubs and be able to bring them back to the hotel room. And I'm sitting there like, how are these guys being able to just meet women on night one? And again, we're all on this trip. We're not making a lot of money. Like, it ain't about the money. They were going in there. They knew how to dress. They had the swag. They knew how to talk that talk to get women coming back. And so I started hanging out with them and studying them because I needed to get an edge up on the game. And so being able to be around other people that are successful at this is the easiest way to make progress. If you're trying to go at this alone, you can make some progress, but it's going to take years. And we want to make sure that that time that you're learning this stuff is going to be cut, because as much as we think we're going to be here forever, we're not. And so if you don't like where you're at right now, hire me, read my stuff, read other people's stuff, or find some dudes in your area that you can say, hey, I just want to hang out with you for a night. You seem to be good with the ladies, and I'll buy you lunch or something, but I'd love to just like talk your head off about getting women, you know? Another thing, correlation, video games and dating, is that in video games, if you want to be successful, it is all about persistence. It is about trial and error. It is about overcoming multiple obstacles multiple times over. Like I said, I've been playing Zelda extensively for like a month and a half now, right? And in that time, there have been several times where I've been trying to find a certain treasure chest or trying to get a certain weapon. Right now, I'm trying to get for the Master Sword, or, you know, trying to beat this baddie, but I can't seem to figure it out. And I get like slaughtered to death. And I keep going back, and I go out and I find new weapons, and I cook new potions and things and new foods to get my strength up, to build my stamina, so I can go back to those places and find that treasure and beat that bad guy. And when we're in the video game world, we get it. We know that we're probably not going to beat that boss the first time. It's going to take multiple iterations, but we're persistent. Why are we persistent? Because we know that if we pursue for this and we go through it, the end result is we're going to get that new weapon. We're going to beat that boss and open up another level. There's going to be a reward on the other end of this, right? And so many guys are great at understanding this for video games. I'm going to be persistent until I finally figure out how to do this thing. And yet they go ask out one woman. She says no. Oh my God, I give up. Unfortunately, guys, in the realm of dating and trying to learn how to date, it's going to mean that you got to ask out more than one woman, and you got to ask out more than one time. Like, you got to understand that it is a numbers game to some extent, but more importantly, it's a persistence game. This isn't to say, by the way, that if you ask out a specific girl and she says no, to keep asking her out. But it does mean that you need to be in the practice of practicing asking out multiple women. If you ask this one out and she says no, great. Study up what you could have done better in your approach, and then try on the next girl. She says, maybe kind of, you don't want that. You're not there yet. Go to the next one. Figure out what you're doing. Figure out what to say, how to say it. Maybe it's your tone of voice. Maybe it's a style. Maybe you're coming in too abrasively. Maybe you need to have a bit more of a convo before you. But the point is, you figure out the strategy you need until you get the results that you want with at least one girl. Because I'll tell you now, it might not be the first 5 you ask out, but that 6th one, you could have unlocked the code to figure out, oh, I now know how to make a woman feel comfortable enough to agree to at least give me her number. And that comes from being persistent. So don't look at 1 or 2 failures as like, you're the worst guy ever. No girl's going to want to date you. Just look at it as, you know what? You didn't get enough practice in, but the more practice you get in, the more persistent you are at being able to learn this stuff, then you'll get the results that you want. Another correlation between video games and dating, and I try to teach this one to you guys all the time, right? Is that, let's take Zelda, for example, right? In the game, if you just run at the goblins, chances are you're going to get slaughtered. I've seen some goblins in this game. They have some overpowered weapons. They got like rock boulders, and they got Zonai things that they can throw flames and stuff at me. Versus, okay, I get there and I can see them in the distance, right? And I see a rock over here. So I go behind the rock, and then I'm kind of studying up, okay, let me check what's in my inventory. I got a homing device here and a bomb here. I'm going to set up this timing bomb. I'm going to put it right here, and then I'm going to walk away. Well, I'm going to run towards them. And then when they start running towards me, I'm going to run back. I'm going to shoot an arrow at the time bomb. You play this a lot, right? And then by the time they run to where I used to be, they'll blow up, right? So what am I telling the story for? What is that about? It's about patience, and it's about timing. And in video game world, you guys know, if you're playing a first-person shooter, like a GoldenEye, because I'm old, or a Halo or whatever, or even like in Zelda, there's going to be moments where rushing in isn't the best strategy. You're going to have to know, okay, this is the moment where I can rush in, but this one over here, I need to be a bit more stealth. I need to take my time. I need to make sure I have a full-on strategy. I need to back away. Hey, I need the bad guy to come to me, so I need to kind of like sit over here and just kind of wait for him to kind of slowly walk over. I'll like throw a piece of meat out there, and he can walk over to me, and then I can attack, right? And so the same is true with women. Like, I think the problem guys have is that we start dating, and we think, go, 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 go. I got to be going all the time, or she's going to lose interest. Versus thinking, hey, for the date, I'm going to go, 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 and then I'm going to pull back a bit. I'm going to like text her for a little bit, and then I'm going to sit back and let her text me first. And guys think that that's game playing. I got news for you. Let's say it is game playing. It's the version of game playing that's allowing her to have the ability to choose if she wants to interact with you and to choose how she feels about you. And it's easier to build that up if you know the right times to be present and the right times to kind of back away. This is why I tell you guys all the time, like I go on first dates and then I wait 4 or 5 days. I'm in that moment, what am I doing? When I'm on the date, I'm being persistent, and this is the time now to get to know me, to laugh, to have a good time, to be cordial, to build up a little bit of interest. And then I know to go away, because I know that going away equals her sitting with her thoughts. And a woman's thought life is the most powerful thing in her arsenal that's going to help you out. You know why? Because women tend to connect everything together. And so you take her on a good date, show her a good time, and you give her all these great feelings. And now everything in the course of her week is correlating to this. I'm having such a great week because of that time that I had with this guy. You got to give her that time to feel that, right? But that goes back to patience and timing. Just like in a video game, you got to know when to pull back and when to make yourself present. You have to learn the balance of that in dating. If you don't know what that is, I have plenty of videos on my YouTube page that can help you with that. But also, you can hire me for coaching, and we can help you figure out like why you may have so much anxiety about the idea of like, I didn't text her for 24 hours. Oh my God. Because I've had plenty of guys write me about that. Like, I didn't text her for a day, and what I don't know if I should, like, we get all panicky because we think if we're not in front of her 24/7, she's going to lose interest. And women just don't operate that way. Like, women want the time to miss you, to think about you, to ponder the mystery of what you're doing when you're not in her presence. Like, you need to give them the ability to experience that as part of the dating process. Another thing, parallels between video games and dating is character customization. A lot of these games now, you can choose like the color skin of your character or the clothing skin, or you can create your own character altogether, right? And so, but within the games that allow you to do that, we have a fun time doing that because it allows us to do what? It allows us to give our character a distinction over other characters out there. You were playing like a Halo or a Fortnite or something like that, then this is like basically branding you. You're saying, I'm representing myself as this game. This game gave me the options to do that. And so I'm going to choose my clothing choice. I'm going to choose what my body looks like, et cetera, right? I got news for you. You have the same ability to do that in real life as it pertains to your dating life, because your job is to help you stand out amongst the other guys that she's dating. So if you're just doing the average collar and a tie, you could do that. That could be a look, but you have the ability to make yourself stand out. Up to this point, you may have thought, I just want to be me and whatever. You can be whatever version of you want to be. But what I'm saying is that the more distinguished you can make yourself it's going to give you a leg up. So that could be something as simple as like getting a certain style of haircut. It could be something as simple as like, maybe wearing clothes with a certain like bend to it. I'm not a fashion dude, so I don't know what all the terminology is. But the point is that even when I go on dates, like I have a specific type of cologne that I wear that I know smells good. I have my shirts in a certain style that I have now. I have certain shorts or pants that I wear, certain type of shoes. Like you want to make it to where this woman sees you and it's like, oh, yeah, he's definitely different from these other bozos. So I'm saying. Another parallel between dating and video games is that in video games, you will find that you are going to be constantly adapting to new environments. If you're in a Mario game, I can assure you there's a desert level, there's an ice level, there's a sky level, there's a plant level, there's a water world. And each one of these levels, you have a new skill that you got to pick up and you got to do some different stuff, right? And so this is also true of dating. When you're dating somebody, you're going to be put in different environments. The person you're dating is going to be different. They have their own background that they came from. Depending on the city you go to, it's going to be different. As you're dating a person, they're going to bring you in different social settings and different restaurant settings. And so as you're being taken to each of these different settings, you have to learn how to adapt. In video games, we just accept it. Hey, I went from being in a desert world where I had to drink a potion to cool me down to now I'm in a water world where I got to get a suit that allows me to swim upstream in a waterfall. That actually happened in Zelda, right? But we just take it. It's totally cool. But then we want to complain in the real world, oh, why do I got to change myself for this environment? Why is it that I got to meet our friends and dress a certain way or talk a certain way? Dude, that's how dating works, is that if you want to be going location to location with your woman, you're going to have to know before you go to each of these locations what it entails for you to be successful in that environment, all right? Another thing that parallels video games to dating, resource management. That's right. In playing Zelda, for example, swords, shields, various foods, like I have to know how much of these things that I have in order to effectively keep them as proper resources, because if I don't, then the other option is I die or I'm not able to effectively fight a bad guy as good as I need to. The same is also true in the dating world in terms of like your resources, your time, energy, effort, money. You have to know how to balance out all these various things while dating a woman, because you have to have enough money to be able to support yourself while also taking her out for meals. You have to know like your time is valuable, so you want to spend time with her, but also your family and friends. And so you have to really get a hold and a balance on that in order to really be as successful as you want to in dating, because you don't want the woman you're dating to feel shafted or that she's only getting the short end of the stick, whereas everybody else is not, or everybody else feels that you gave up everything in your life for this girl and now they don't get to see you. And there's plenty of stories out there of guys that do that, all right? Hold on one second. We're almost done here, guys. I gotta charge up my computer here. All right. And we're plugged in. All right. So here's a couple more ways that video games parallel dating. So, and I just learned about this recently because I was telling people I was going to do this show. And so I got some terminology I had not heard before, even though I play video games quite often. So in video games, there are things that are called RNGs, which are random number generators. And these are things that differ from player to player. So for example, let's say I'm playing Zelda, right? And I get to this treasure chest and the treasure chest has in it like a gold coin. But then you play Zelda, you go to that same treasure chest and there's like a sword in there, right? So it's random. It's like this chest is, depending on who's playing it, it's just a random thing whereby something will pop up, but we don't know what it is, right? And so depending on what that is, we have to decide how we're going to be able to handle that, right? So if I get a coin, it's like, okay, I got a coin. I thought I was going to get a sword, but I got a coin, so I can go spend this money at the shop and get the sword that I wanted. Or, okay, it's a sword, but it's not money. I really needed money to buy this suit, so I'm going to use this sword to go cut some grass, get some money, and then get the whatever, right? But the point is that these RNGs make it so that way you don't know what you're going to get, but whatever you get, you got to handle it. And that is very true in dating, because in dating, you're going to have situations that pop up with women that you were not expecting it all to happen, and you have to know to handle it. And this could be something that you could think she's going to be one way, and then she's another way instead. It could be something as simple as like a death in the family happens, or suddenly you guys get an eviction notice. What are you going to do when these random things happen? And this is why, as a guy, you always, you need to learn how to be indifferent to outcomes, but also you need to really practice your leadership role, and you need to practice being able to handle a variety of situations and not have the boat rocked, because women are going to look to you to be able to handle when these various situations come up. And if you're not good at that, then you're going to find that the woman is not going to be as trusting of your leadership and probably bail out. Real talk. And then lastly, in last parallel between video games and dating is that in some games, they have what's called QTEs, quick time events. And this is where there's a limited time that's placed on being able to complete a certain task. In Mario, for example, they have levels in like Mario 3D World where you have to get from the opening of the level to the flagpole in a span of like 2 minutes, and they put you on a timer, right? And so if you don't do that, then you lose that particular level. Now, not all the levels in Mario are like that, but there are some that are like that, whereby it's like, oh crap, what are you gonna do? You know, you have to make decisions right away. You have to know the pathway you're going to take, what you're going to use to get to this flagpole, because you got to get there before the time runs out. And the same is true with women in terms of dating them, because again, they're going to look to you to be the ultimate decision maker and the leader of what decisions are being made, basically. And so there's going to be times where things are going to pop up and they're looking to you to make a decision. And if you don't, you lose. The very famous example is when you're like, guys want to get a girl to agree to go on a date, and the guy wants to be all like, okay, great, so what do you want to do? And she says, well, whatever you want to do. At this point, she's saying, I want you to lead this, so make a decision. And guys look at it as a trick question. Oh, no, I got to make sure that she's completely happy with what I choose, so I'm going to throw back to her. Well, whatever you want to do, you lose, because women are testing you early on in the dating process to see if you can make a decision, because if you can't, she knows you're going to be looking to her to make decisions, and women at large do not want to be in charge of decisions in relationships. Like, they want to have their say, they want to add their 2 cents, but most women, this is a generality, are looking for their man as the final say in whatever decision gets made, because if something goes bad, she doesn't want the blame put on her. So early on, you got to know, you got to get good with practicing how to make quick decisions. I'm great at it now. Like, I had a conversation the other day with somebody where they were, I was at this shoot for something, and this guy, who I could tell was a very indecisive guy about things. It was me, him, and a bunch of other people at this shoot. We were sitting with mostly women. And so he asked both me and this girl, do you guys have a hard time making decisions? She said yes, because she's indecisive. I said no. He said, why is that? I said, I just found that it's a lot easier if I kind of just know going in that a decision has to be made, and that I can just choose something and that be the decision. Worst case scenario, if I pick the wrong thing, I learn from it and I just don't do that decision next time. And there's usually a chance to be able to make that decision again. But even if not, worst case is you learn from the mistake, and then later on in life, you know to make a better decision. But there's not really too many majorly bad consequences from quote unquote choosing one thing over the other. And I thought most guys think that there is. And for most women, it's like, I just want you to make a decision. I don't really care what the decision is. I just want you to make a decision. And so, there's gonna be times in life where you got to make a quick decision. You know, if you're an Army brat, for example, you might work at a base, because my dad was an Army brat. So I can speak on this, where it's like, they say, hey, you got to be up and moving like a month, and you got to decide like soon if that's a good move for you and your family. And you can't just sit there and say, well, what do you think we should do, baby? Well, blah, blah, blah. Well, isn't it? Like, you got to be the one to say, hey, my job said we got to move, and so we got to decide what's up, you know? And again, women are looking for you to play that role. And again, if you can do it in video games, then you can practice. You can use that same skill set that you're already practicing in video games to be able to make decisions quickly in your real life with women, all right? So that's what I want to talk about. Just those are the various parallels that I found to be true between video games and between dating. You know, ultimately, like video game skill sets, there are a lot of great things that if you're observant, you'll recognize that, you know, video game skills, they help you practice a lot of things that can actually be useful and beneficial in the course of a relationship. But you got to actually get out there. You got to get away from your screen and use these skills and transfer them over to your dating skills to get the success that you're looking for. If you're having a problem with that, you need help trying to figure out, okay, well, I'm not anxious in video games, but then women just scare me. I get it. Because women, you know, it's different, because video games, we know that if we die, we can always come back. And in the dating world, we can feel as though like if we make a mistake one time, there's no coming back. If we say the wrong thing to this woman, or we do the wrong action to this particular woman, then we don't get a chance with them anymore. And this is where the whole idea of like not being so tied to any one woman comes into play. Because the fear guys have is, I really like this girl over here, right? And if I go to her and I mess it up and I don't get her, then I'm a failure. Versus saying, I want to try to my skills on this girl. And if they don't work, I need to fight another day because there's plenty of other girls out there. Just like in video games, you see the game over screen, but just press continue and you keep playing the game. So treat women, dating women like that. Treat dating women like if they say no, it's just the game over screen and there's always a continue. So hopefully, guys, this helps you guys out. Thank you so much for watching the stream today. There was a lot of hiccups here and there, but, you know, it's live. It happens. But I appreciate all you guys that have watched. If you enjoyed the show, leave a like, subscribe, leave a super chat, and definitely check out the link above. You can go check out my ebooks, audiobooks, and programs and coaching, all designed to help you date as your introverted self while still getting your precious alone time. I do this show every Tuesday at 3:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So be sure to come back next week. As always, guys, I also answer your guys' questions on these shows. So during the course of the week, I go through all my comments and all my emails to be able to answer them on the show. Let's see what time it is now. I got a little bit more time. You know what? Scratch that. I got a couple more things I'm going to answer that I got this week. So I wrote some people that said I was going to answer their question for this show, and I don't want to not do that. So I'll start back here and see if there's anything else that I want to answer from people. Let's see. Okay, let me go here. Okay, answer that one from the last show. Let's see here. Oh, shoot. You know what? I had an interesting conversation the other day. Well, sorry, let me scratch that. I overheard an interesting conversation the other day between a man and a woman, right? So this woman was talking about how she was back on the dating apps and she had recently matched with this guy and gone on a date with him, right? And so the guy was like, well, how'd the date go and whatever. And she was saying, well, it was a pretty decent date. And then she was saying, but she was questioning whether or not she wanted to see him again or not. And if what she learned about him on a date was a red flag. And he said, well, what happened? And so what she said was she went out with the guy. And in the course of getting to know him, he expressed that he had just gotten out of jail a few weeks ago. And she said, well, what are you in jail for? And he said he had been in jail for selling narcotics, like drugs and stuff. And so she literally said, so I'm wondering now if I should give him points for being honest with me about it, or if I should take away points because he was selling drugs. And she was really like trying to balance if the fact that he told her about that, if that means that because he's so honest about that, that he's now trustworthy enough to be able to date in spite of the fact that he did a kind of bad thing, right? And it really does speak to this idea of what do women actually value? Do they value honesty from a guy, or do they value what his actual lifestyle is? And what I'm finding more and more is that overall, most women on average actually are appreciating more so the fact that a guy is honest with them about whatever versus lying about it. And I stress this because as guys, we think we have to be so perfect and that if we do anything wrong whatsoever, that it means that we are just going to be seen as like the worst person ever. And it's like they really value honesty more so than they do actually like what we're doing. Like, and I stress this because some of you guys are thinking like, you know, well, the reason that women don't like me is because I'm not perfect or doing this, is not whatever. And if I tell her about my lifestyle, like I live at home with my mom, or, you know, I don't have a job, I don't have a car, that means that she's not going to like me. And when I tell you the number of women that I have met personally that have dated bum dudes that had next to nothing, that they were still interested in dating, it would blow your freaking mind. I've had it where I've literally been a guy that at one point had like a decent job and couldn't get women, and then had no job and was living on somebody's couch and had women that were dating me and knew my situation, where I was like, yeah, I don't have a car. I'll meet you there by catching the bus. Yeah, I can't really pay for this date, so I'm going to like, you know, take you out somewhere else instead. Like that kind of stuff happens. And when I first tried it, it baffled me. Like I was really that guy that was like, I don't want to tell women about everything about myself or what I'm doing because, oh my God. And lo and behold, when I actually just didn't give a crap and just said, yeah, this is my situation, they were more turned on because they had never heard a guy be so honest about their situation. So I stress this because I want you guys to get over the fact that your life's not perfect. And I know if you go online, the narrative is if you don't have six figures or have six-pack abs or are 6 inches or longer, or whatever like that, that women won't date you. And I found the online world totally true. In the real world, I have friends that are like 5'6" that have married taller women. I know dudes that are overweight that get hot model chicks. I know dudes that, well, I don't know what their stuff is like down there, but either way, all these types of guys still get women, and they're blatantly honest about what's going on in their lives and about their height and about what they're doing and all this little stuff, right? But if you are a liar, women will punish a liar who claims to be a nice guy over a jerk guy that's at least being honest about how much he doesn't want her as a girlfriend. And so you have to start to get comfortable with that. The idea that you can be your honest, authentic self in all of its ugly glory, and that women will more often than not be like, I'd rather date him than somebody else. The fact that this woman is like, he went to jail and I'm still contemplating a second date with him should tell you everything you need to know ever about how honesty trumps being a nice guy and how honesty trumps trying to hide who you truly are, you know? But that was the thing that definitely happened this week. I was like, oh my God, I'm hearing this conversation. I'm like, what? But, you know, it's not anything new. Anyway, I want to get to this comment here. This woman, I answered her comment in a previous show. So she had commented under a video I did called, "She never initiates text. Is she pulling away?" And the way she had worded it, I couldn't tell if she was agreeing with me or not. So she wrote, so I commented on what she said. And then suffice to say, she agreed with me and it was talking about how basically, like I say, you know, women, you should look for women to initiate text more so than you. Like for every 3 texts that she initiates, you initiate 1. The exception being that you're always going to be the one to initiate for purposes of asking for a date. So when you do, you take her on a date, show her a good time, wait a few days, and then you text her. That first text back should be like, hey, long as you know time, we'd love to take you out, you know? So anyway, so she responded from that. She said, hey, I'm the girl that left you that message on your old video. I agreed with that video. But regarding after meeting with a guy, I would never send a message to a guy after a date, even if the date was amazing. I would be waiting for the guy to text me, and then I would reciprocate. I can totally help myself and have self-control, even if I'm crazy about a guy. I need the guy to text me first for the first months. I struggle initiating. I prefer to reciprocate. And I don't like the guy to text me after 5 days of a great date. I prefer he texts me the next day to check on me, and then I will start to text him back and talk more. We need to feel safe. I'm not asking a guy to text me nonstop, but I need to see he is interested in me initiating conversations so I can feel safe and then start initiating conversations. Please don't misunderstand a woman just because she does not initiate text. So I told her I would cover this in the show today. There's a lot to unpack here. So I want to start off by saying this, because I all the advice and stuff that I give you guys is based on my experience. And I always believe that as right as I think I am, ultimately your experience may vary. So if this is a woman that is saying that her experience is that she doesn't like these things and whatever, I have to take her at her word, right? So we'll do that. In my personal experience of dating women, and I've dated a lot of women, right? I can safely say that most of what she's saying here does not matter when the woman has high interest in a guy. As a generality, she may be the outlier. I can't give you guys advice based on like an anomaly, right? I have to give you guys advice based on what I find to be generally true of what works when you're trying to date women. So I'm going to go through her message, right? So she says, after meeting a guy, I would never send a message to a guy after a date, even if the date was amazing. I would be waiting for the guy to text me, and then I would reciprocate. So in her case, that could be true. In my personal experience, dating women that have a high interest in me, I have found if I take them on a good date and show them a great time, and then I walk them back to the car, give them a hug, hey, I had a great time, get home safe, boom. I have found that assuming the first date was successful, usually before I get home, I'm talking like it might be a 30 to 45 minute drive from the date spot to when I get home. By the time I've gotten home, I'll usually get a text from her saying, hey, thanks again for the great night. I had a great evening. So she could be the one person that wants a guy to text her after a date. I have found as a generality that more often than not, if a woman had a good time on a date and you've started to build proper high interest, you don't have to do that. Like, she's going to be the one to reach out because, and I've said this on the show before, when women find that they really connect with the guy, because that doesn't happen to them every day, however they generally do things changes. Because a guy that she's just kind of middling interested in, okay, well, I'll hit him up when I hit him up. A guy that she's like, oh my God, he's like 5-star, she wants to be in front of you to make sure that you don't try to choose somebody else instead of her. Okay. Again, my personal experience. Continuing on, when she said, I can totally help myself and have self-control, even if I'm crazy about a guy. Honestly, my thought would be she has not met a guy that she's completely head over heels in. Now, granted, to be fair, some women have been brought up to believe that, hey, if I need to have the guy be in control, and so when the guy wants to see me, he'll hit me up, and don't be that overly thirsty girl that's going to hit him up. So leave all the texting to him. So this could be that woman. But this is why I stress you guys, even those kind of women, right? They just want to hear from you. So whether you text her the day after or you text her 4 days from now, if she has built a high interest in you after that first date, she will not care when you hit her up. I've literally gone on dates with women where I took them on a date and then it was like, oh, I got to go out of town for 2 weeks. And I don't hit them up for 2 weeks. And I get back, hey, I'm back in town. Let's go out. And they're like, oh, absolutely. So I stress this because she's right in the sense that, like, you know, even if she's crazy about a guy, she wants him to text first. But that doesn't mean the texting first has to happen right away. Because when she has high interest, she's just looking to be talked, to be reached out from you whenever you can to make another date happen. When she says, I need the guy to text me first for the first few months. And I didn't disagree with that. I actually think the guy should be the one to texting first after 4 days or 5 days of waiting after that date. So the guy, in effect, is still going to text first. If she's a woman that doesn't want to text first, that's totally fine. There are some women that will have high interest and won't necessarily want to be the ones to text first because they fear they're going to be too thirsty. That's totally fine. You as a guy, keep it on the same program. You text to ask her on a date. You take her on a date, show her a good time, go away for a few days, and then repeat. And most sane women that have a high interest in you will not be mad that they didn't hear from you. They may have wanted to hear from you, which we'll get into in a second, right? But they're not going to take it out on you for not reaching out for those 3 or 4 days, because when you reach back out, you ask for a date, which is really all they wanted. She says, I struggle initiating, and I don't like the guy to text me after 5 days of a great date. Listen to this carefully, right? I prefer he texts me the next day to check on me, and then I will start to text him back and talk more. Now, she's saying she would prefer that. In other words, she wants him to text. But what I've said before is this, is that sometimes, this is weird to say, sometimes in the dating realm of things, her wanting you to do something is a more powerful way to build interest than actually giving her what she wants. So if you go 4 or 5 days without texting her, that whole time she's what? I wanted to text him. Why isn't he texting me? I really thought we had a good time on a date. What's been going on? Why isn't he? Is he seeing somebody else maybe? I don't know what's going on with him. He's very mysterious. Oh my God. That keeps you on her mind for 5 days straight. And if she's thinking about you, the subconscious part of her is saying, but why do I want him to text me so badly? It must be because I'm interested. So ultimately, for the most part, you don't lose points. There are some women out there that if you hit them up after 4 or 5 days and you say, hey, I'm going to go with you on another date, and their response is going to be, why did you hit me up, blah, 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 blah. Guys, don't date those women, because as much as you think it's a compliment to you that she wants to see you, the reality is she's coming at you very abrasively. And because what she's thinking is, you didn't hit me up for 4 or 5 days because you're trying to play games and you're not that interested. But your first text back to her was, you're asking her out, which means you were interested. So those are women that are in their feelings and they can't handle like a guy being patient. And you want to actually test this out. This is an example of, like, for those of you guys that are thinking like, oh my God, like, waiting 4 or 5 days to call is game playing. This is an example of how you test a woman to see if she has patience, and more importantly, if she can handle not getting her way. She wanted you to contact her in those 3 or 4 days, but you didn't. How is she going to respond to that? When you text her up, is she going to respond by saying, it's just so great to hear from you again, I'd love a second date? Or is she going to be, but you should have texted me and blah, 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 blah. I got news for you. Those are the kind of women that are going to cause fights later about other dumb stuff that you don't want to deal with. So use that as a way to test women early on. Give them the gift of missing you and of feeling that anxiety and frustration of not hearing from you and wondering what it means, and you being mysterious and you being able to go in there later on and give her what you wanted anyway, which was another date. And I'm gonna tell you too, I found if you wait between dates to contact a woman and she's like building up anticipation to see you again, when she sees you again on a date, I can assure you, you're going to get farther along with her in whatever way you need that to mean than you would have had you been pestering her every single day. I'm just saying. But hey, if that's game playing, so be it. Your results may vary. I found that giving myself time and giving her time between dates to not hear from me usually worked out in my favor and eventually led to a relationship. So you don't have to do that. But if you're struggling, it's probably because you're thinking, I got to text her after the date. I got to text her every single day. I got to be in front of her face because this is what she wants. Giving women what they want all the time can result in you not ever getting what you want. So just keep that in your head, all right? So then she says, we need to feel safe. I'm not asking a guy to text me nonstop, but I need to see he's interested in me. He's interested in me initiating conversations so I can feel safe and then start initiating conversations. So she's trying to make the parallel of, in order to feel safe, I need a guy to text me a lot. And that is a misread that women have. Because they think they're trying to figure out, okay, some women honestly don't know how their feelings build for a guy. They just know that some guys are doing it better than others. And so a lot of girls start to believe, well, I need a guy to text me all the time in order to feel things, in order to talk to him more, in order to get to know him so I can trust him a lot faster. And having conversations is one way to build trust, but for them, building trust is the feelings that they're having about you. When you take her on a good date and then you don't talk to her for a minute, then what happens is she only can go based on how you made her feel on that date. If you made her feel great on that date, then she's trusting that when she sees you again, you're going to make her feel the same way. When you talk to her again, you're going to make her feel the same way. And so whether it's the next day or 4 or 5 days from now, it's not going to matter as long as when you hit her up again, that she's still getting those same feelings. And that's not a feeling that you can have. You can have all the conversations in the world with a girl. That's not going to make her suddenly trust you enough to want to date you, because trust building is a factor into building attraction to you, but there's also other things, right? And so conversation helps, but other things beyond just building trust, like, again, is she having a fun time with you? Do you make her laugh? Does she feel heard when she talks to you about stuff? Like, those other things are important. So if the conversation part isn't there by way of you not texting her all the time, but then you get her on a date and you're making her laugh, feel heard, all these other things, that's going to weigh more heavily than, oh, but you didn't text her for a couple of days. All right. So I'm not saying anything here negates what she's saying or how she experiences dating. I'm saying she is an anomaly, and I can't give advice based on anomalies, when in my experience, I have found that being more patient and not texting a lot and waiting for them to initiate usually gets me better results. Maybe some of you guys have experienced this, maybe not, but either way, I'm saying that's my experience, so I have to go off of that. If you have been able to successfully, as a guy, text a woman nonstop and be able to get her interested, then kudos to you. The comments and the messages that I get from men complaining about the fact that they're doing that all the time and not getting the results says to me that that's not typically what's going on. That's all I'm saying, guys. So I think that's all I have. My voice is starting to give out. So I think that's all I have for today. For the messages that I did not get to, I will do them in a separate video and put them out later this week for you guys. But thank you all for tuning in and watching. I appreciate every one of you guys for watching and showing your support. Like I said, you can go to the website, introvertdatingsuccess.com, for one-on-one coaching, as well as ebooks, audiobooks, and programs, all designed to help you date as your introverted self while still getting your precious alone time. We do the show every Tuesday at 3:30 p.m., so be sure to check back for the new show. Be sure to like this channel and subscribe, and I will catch you guys in the next one. I'm out. Peace.
Call this beat Will Smith, cause it slaps hard.